All right, for chapter 10, I want to review with you guys the difference between present active and present passive infinitives. Remember that the reason a verb is labeled as an infinitive is if it is not finite, or in other words, limited to a certain person or number. So notice that if you were to conjugate the verb amo amare, you could say amo, I love, amas, you love, amat, he, she, or it loves. All those verbs are limited by person and number, whereas amare, to love, is not limited by any person or number, right? It's just the act of loving, to love. Okay, so that's the infinitive form. All right. Now, to make clear the difference between active and passive, you have to remember that in a statement with an active verb, you have a subject who performs an action, and if the active verb is transitive, it may take a direct object. So I might say, I hit the table. Hit is in that case an active verb because I, the subject, hit the table, which is the direct object. The subject acts upon the direct object. But in a passive sentence, you'll note that the previous direct object becomes the subject of the sentence, and in a passive sentence, the key is that the subject does not perform the action of the sentence, but rather receives the action of the sentence. So to change the initial sentence, I hit the table, into passive, you could say, the table is hit by me. Notice that the table is now the subject about which the sentence is spoken, and then is hit is your main verb, and the table receives that action. There's no direct object in a passive sentence. It can't happen. All right, so with that out of the way, note that your present active infinitive is always your second part. Most verbs have a full set of 4 principal parts. You'll remember that the first one is the present active indicative form for the first person singular. So laudo, I praise. But then your second principal part is your present active infinitive. So laudare is to praise. All right? So all regular verbs that have their full set of principal parts will have one of these, and it'll be your present active infinitive. All right, so those are just part of the principal parts that you should be remembering when you find the verbs. Now, to form the present passive infinitives, you need to change the active infinitive in very regular and predictable ways, depending on what conjugation the verb belongs to. You'll remember that there are 4 different verb conjugations, and each of the verb conjugations is classified by the last 3 letters of the active infinitive ending. So laudare, this is first conjugation because you notice you have an are ending. Second conjugation has an ere ending with a long e. Third conjugation short ere, and then fourth ire. All right. So in order to form the first conjugation's present passive infinitive, you just change are to ari. Therefore, laudare becomes laudari. To praise, laudare becomes laudari, to be praised. Videre will change to videri. Ere changes to eri. So with videre, you have to see, videri, to be seen. Dicere is to say, and this is where you need to watch out. In these third conjugations, the ere, because that e is short, it is effectively lost, and what happens is the full ere thing right here becomes just an I. So watch out. If you have a passive infinitive with just an I, it's going to be third conjugation. So dicere becomes dici. To say becomes to be said. All right? And then audire, to hear. Ire will change to iri, and you'll have audiri. So to hear becomes to be heard. Let's look at a little bit of this in context. So on page 74 of your book, you'll have these examples. Notice in the active, Julius Marcum non videre sed audire potest. You want to say Julius is not able to see Marcus, but to hear him. Note that if you look down here at the passives, when you have videre and audiri, this will change into Marcus a Julio non videri sed audiri potest. Marcus is not able to be seen by Julius, but he is able to be heard. So notice right here, not to see, but to hear. Up here, not to be seen, but to be heard. And notice right here, Marcum is your direct object in this sentence. He becomes the subject of the passive sentence talking about the same thing. All right? So remember, in the passive, the subject is the one who receives the verbal action, whereas with an active verb, your direct object, which will be in the accusative case, is the one that receives the verbal action. Then take a look at the form for the verb to eat. Note that this one is irregular. All of these other infinitives, they're formed this way as the second principal part, and they change into their passive forms in very predictable ways. So any first conjugation verb will change just like this. Any verb ending in are will change its infinitive into are into the passive. All right. Same thing with videre. Any form in ere will turn into ere in the passive. Okay. But the verb for to eat, edo esse edi, note that that's esse with a long e. You have to watch out for that macron on that particular verb, because notice esse with a long e is to eat, esse with a short e is to be. All right. Note that both of these infinitives are irregular, so esse to eat and then edi to be eaten. Neither one of those follow the same sort of rules that you saw with this particular chart. So you need to memorize those. If you take a look right here, you can see nemo enim, starting right here, nemo enim gemas esse potest, for no one is able to eat gems. Gemai edi non possunt, gems are not able to be eaten. Note right here, you have gemas as your direct object in the accusative case. In order for that sentence to become passive, the recipient of the action has to become nominative, and that becomes your subject. Hopefully that's all clear. If it's not, let me know in class.